I ended up with nothing while my sister walked away with everything. It happened 3 days after our parents died. She is my older sister. The lawyer read out one number. There was no reason I should have been excluded. I remember thinking maybe I misunderstood something. I kept replaying the order of events in my head. None of it added up. This is how it actually happened. Our parents died within hours of each other. My father had a heart attack early in the morning. My mother collapsed later that same evening. By the time I reached the hospital, both of them were already gone. I stood in the hallway with my sister while nurses moved quietly around us. She cried loudly. I did not. I felt numb. I remember thinking that shock would wear off later and the grief would come in waves. At that moment, nothing came at all. The next few days passed in a blur. Phone calls, paperwork, family members flying in and out, people bringing food we did not eat. My sister took charge of most conversations. She spoke confidently with doctors, funeral staff, and relatives. I followed along and signed where I was told to sign. I trusted her. She was older. She always handled things. We stayed at our parents' house during that week. I slept in my old room. Everything looked the same as it had years ago. Same furniture, same photos on the walls, same quiet creaks at night. My sister took the master bedroom. She said it made sense since she was coordinating everything. I did not argue. On the second night, she mentioned that our parents had updated their will recently. She said they did it after selling one of their companies. I nodded. I already knew about the sale. They had told me about it months earlier. They said they wanted to simplify things. I assumed that meant dividing assets clearly between us. I never imagined what that division actually looked like. The meeting with the lawyer was scheduled for the following week. Until then, my sister started making plans. She talked about what she would do with the house. She talked about investments. She talked about hiring people to manage things. I listened quietly. I noticed she never said we. She always said I. I told myself it was just the way she spoke. The day before the meeting, she asked me what I planned to do next. I said I would probably take some time off work. She nodded and said that made sense. Then she suggested I might want to start looking for a place of my own soon. I laughed awkwardly and said I was already settled where I lived. She smiled but did not say anything else. The lawyer's office was calm and professional. Neutral colors, soft lighting, a long table with documents neatly arranged. The lawyer shook our hands and offered condolences. He spoke slowly and carefully. He said our parents had been very thorough. He said everything was documented clearly. He started reading. Most of it sounded normal at first. Accounts, properties, investments, trusts, percentages. I tried to follow along, but the numbers blurred together. Then he said the final distribution. He said my sister would receive the primary estate. He said the estimated value, $28 million. Then he turned to me. He said I would receive a small personal effects package and a one-time transfer to cover immediate expenses. I did not react right away. I waited for him to continue. I assumed there was more. He looked at me calmly and said that was all. I asked him to repeat that last part. He did, slowly, clearly. I looked at my sister. She did not look back at me. She stared at the table as if she had expected this. I asked if there had been a mistake. The lawyer said no. He said the will was explicit. He said both parents had signed it. He said there was no ambiguity. I said that did not make sense. I said our parents would never do that. The lawyer nodded politely and said many people feel that way in these situations. I felt my face get warm. I did not want to argue. I did not want to accuse anyone. I asked if there was any explanation included. The lawyer said there was a letter attached. He asked if I wanted to hear it. I said yes. The letter was short. It said they believed my sister was better equipped to manage the estate. It said they trusted she would act responsibly. It said they assumed I would be able to take care of myself. That was it. I sat back in the chair. I tried to think clearly. I told myself not to react emotionally. I told myself there might be details I did not know yet. After the meeting, my sister asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. She said she was relieved everything was settled. She said it would make things easier. I nodded again. That evening, she told me I would need to move out of the house soon. She said the estate required it. She said she planned to sell the property. She gave me a timeline. It was short. I asked if there was any flexibility. She said she would check but did not sound hopeful. I went back to my room and closed the door. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. I tried to remember conversations with my parents. I tried to recall any hint of disappointment, any sign they thought less of me. I came up empty. I thought about the timing. the sale of the company, the will update, the speed at which everything happened. I wondered how long my sister had known. I wondered if she had been involved. I told myself I was being paranoid. Over the next few days, small things started to feel off. My sister asked me for the house keys. She said it was for the realtor. She asked for documents she said she needed for the estate. She asked me to forward mail. She changed the tone of her voice when she spoke to me. More formal, less familiar. One morning I overheard her on the phone. She was talking about restructuring assets. She mentioned trusts and protections. She said she needed to secure everything quickly. I packed my things quietly. I did not want conflict. I told myself it was temporary. I stayed with a friend nearby. I reached out to the lawyer a few days later. I asked if there was any option to review the will. He said I could request a copy. I did. When I read it, nothing jumped out at me at first. It looked official, clean, properly signed. Then I noticed the date. It was signed 6 weeks before our parents died. I thought about that window of time. I thought about how often my sister visited them during that period. I thought about how little I had been around. I still did not accuse her. I still questioned myself. Maybe my parents really believed this was best. Maybe they thought they were protecting the estate. Maybe they thought I would be fine. Then something else bothered me. My father had always been meticulous about procedures. He locked everything down. He never signed documents casually. He always reviewed things multiple times. The will stated it had been signed in person, with witnesses, at a specific office. I remembered something important. During the week the will was signed, my father was hospitalized for complications related to his heart. He barely left the house before that. He definitely did not go to any offices. I pulled out my phone and checked old messages. I found a text from my mother during that week saying they were staying in and resting. She mentioned my father was exhausted. I stared at the date again. I did the math in my head. I asked myself if I was misremembering. I checked hospital records. The dates matched. My father was admitted the same day the will claimed he was signing documents in person. I felt a slow tightening in my chest. Not anger, just confusion, the kind that makes you question your own memory. I called the lawyer again. I asked him where the signing took place. He gave me the address. I looked it up. It was not a hospital. It was a private office. I asked who arranged the appointment. He said my sister had coordinated logistics. I did not respond right away. He added something else. He said there was one detail he had assumed was resolved. He said there had been a question about access permissions. I asked what he meant. He said the will required both parents to independently request the revision. He said there had been an initial issue because one of them had not submitted the request personally. He paused. He said it was resolved later. I asked how. He said my sister had provided documentation granting temporary authority. I thanked him and ended the call. I sat there for a long time. I did not feel betrayed yet. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something I did not fully understand. I remembered how quickly my sister had taken control after our parents died, how prepared she seemed, how certain. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. That night I could not sleep. I kept replaying the timeline, the hospitalization, the signatures, the authority. I wondered why the lawyer had not questioned it more. I wondered why no one had called me. I wondered what else I did not know. The next morning I received a message from the lawyer. He asked if I could come in again. He said there was a procedural matter that needed clarification. I agreed. When I arrived, he looked more serious than before. He said he had reviewed the file after our conversation. He said there was one inconsistency that required discussion. He said there was a question he needed to ask. He looked at me directly. He asked whether I had ever granted my sister power of attorney over my parents' affairs. I told him no. He nodded slowly. He said that was what he needed to confirm. Then he opened the file again and turned to a page I had not seen before. He said this changed how things would proceed, and that was when I realized the story I thought I knew was only part of it. When the lawyer said that, I did not know how to respond. I asked him what exactly was changing. He said he needed to explain a few things slowly. He told me that the authority document my sister provided was not a standard power of attorney. It was a temporary authorization tied to a specific medical situation. It allowed limited actions. It did not allow estate planning changes. It did not allow will revisions. It was never meant for that. He said at the time, the file showed the requirement as satisfied. He said no one had questioned it because the paperwork looked complete. He said that was an assumption on their part. I asked why no one verified it with me. He said the will listed my sister as the primary point of contact. He said communications were routed through her. He said that was not unusual. I sat quietly and listened. He said there was another issue. He said the witnesses listed on the will had signed on different dates. He said that was uncommon. He said it did not automatically invalidate the document, but it raised questions. I asked if this meant the will was invalid. He said it meant it could be contested. I told him I was not trying to fight my sister. I said I just wanted to understand what happened. I said I wanted to know what my parents actually intended. He nodded and said that mattered. He said the next step would require notifying my sister. He said she would be asked to explain how the authorization was obtained and why the process unfolded the way it did. I left the office feeling unsteady, not angry, just unsure. I still did not know what to believe. Later that day, my sister called me. She asked why the lawyer had contacted her. Her tone was different, controlled, careful. I told her I had questions about the will. I told her something did not line up. She said everything was legal. She said the lawyer had already confirmed that. She said I was overthinking things. I said I just wanted clarity. She paused before responding. Then she said she did not have time for this. She said she was dealing with enough already. She said our parents had trusted her for a reason. I did not push back. Over the next week, the situation shifted quietly. My sister became less responsive. She stopped answering calls. She replied to messages hours later. When she did respond, her replies were short. The lawyer reached out again. He said my sister had submitted additional documents. He said they explained the authority issue. He said he was reviewing them. I asked if they resolved the inconsistency. He said not completely. He said one document referenced a conversation that had never been recorded. He said it cited verbal consent from my father at a time when he was sedated. That detail stayed with me. I remembered visiting my father in the hospital during that week. He was tired, confused at times. He drifted in and out of sleep. He barely spoke. I tried to picture him discussing estate planning in that state. It did not feel realistic. Still, I questioned myself. Grief can distort memory. Stress can blur timelines. I told myself to wait for facts. A few days later, the lawyer asked me to come in again. This time there were more people in the room. Another attorney. A compliance officer. They introduced themselves calmly. They said they needed to ask me about my relationship with my parents. They asked how often I visited them. They asked if I was financially dependent on them. They asked if there had been any conflict between me and my sister. I answered honestly. I said I was independent. I said I lived my own life. I said there had never been major conflict, just differences. They asked if my parents had ever expressed concerns about me managing money. I said no. They asked if I had ever declined responsibility when asked. I said no. They thanked me and said that helped. After that meeting, I felt exposed. Like my life had been laid out and examined. I did not like it. But I also felt strangely relieved. Someone was finally asking questions. That evening, my sister showed up at my friend's place unannounced. She stood outside and asked to talk. I went out to meet her. She said she felt blindsided. She said she thought I trusted her. She said involving lawyers was unnecessary. I told her I had not involved anyone. I said questions came up on their own. She said that did not matter. She said intentions mattered. I asked her directly if our parents had known about the exact distribution. She said yes. I asked if they had discussed it with her in detail. She said yes. I asked if they had discussed it with me. She hesitated. Then she said they assumed I would understand. That answer felt thin. I asked her about the hospital week. I asked how the will was signed. She said arrangements were made. She said people came to them. I asked who. She said professionals. I asked for names. She said she did not remember. I did not argue. I just listened. Before leaving, she said something that stayed with me. She said our parents had worried I would contest things. She said they wanted to prevent conflict. I asked how excluding me entirely would prevent conflict. She did not answer. The next few weeks passed slowly. The lawyer reviewed documents. Requests were made. Explanations were logged. Everything happened quietly, through emails and scheduled calls. I stayed out of it as much as I could. I went back to work. I tried to focus on routine. But then I received a copy of a medical report. It had been attached to one of the submissions. It showed sedation times. It showed when my father was alert. The window for the alleged consent did not exist. I forwarded it to the lawyer without comment. He responded later that day. He said that was significant. He said the issue was no longer about intent. It was about validity. He said if the will was deemed improperly executed, the previous will would apply. I asked what the previous will said. He said it divided assets evenly. That was the first time I felt something close to anger, not at my sister, at the situation, at how fragile everything suddenly seemed. I did not tell anyone else. A week later there was a formal notice. The estate process was paused. Distributions were halted. Properties could not be sold. My sister called me immediately. Her voice was raised. She asked what I had done. I said I had not done anything. I said I had only answered questions. She said that answering questions was the same thing. She said I was tearing the family apart. I reminded her that our parents were gone. She hung up. After that, communication stopped entirely. I heard from relatives instead. Some said my sister was stressed. Some said she felt betrayed. Some asked why I was causing trouble. I did not explain myself. I did not defend myself. I waited. The lawyer scheduled one final meeting for the month. He said a determination would be made. When I arrived, he told me my sister had declined to attend in person. She would join by call. He summarized the findings. He spoke carefully. He said the execution of the will did not meet procedural requirements. He said the authority used was insufficient. He said the timeline did not support informed consent. He said the will would not stand. There was silence on the call. Then my sister spoke. Her voice was tight. She said this was not fair. She said intentions mattered more than paperwork. The lawyer said the law did not work that way. He said the estate would revert to the previous will. He said assets would be split evenly. My sister disconnected without saying goodbye. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. After the call, the lawyer asked if I had any questions. I asked what would happen next. He said the process would restart. He said it would take time. I nodded. As I left the office, I thought about how easily everything had shifted. One question, one document, on. Assumption. I thought about my parents. I wondered what they would think of all this. I wondered if they had ever imagined it would unfold this way. I still did not know, and I still did not know what this would mean for my relationship with my sister. All I knew was that the outcome everyone had accepted was no longer certain, and nothing felt settled yet. When the process restarted, everything slowed down. There were forms again, waiting periods, reviews. Nothing moved quickly anymore. The money was there, but it was frozen behind procedures. The house was still legally part of the estate. The accounts were untouched. On paper, everything was paused. In real life, the effects were immediate. My sister stopped talking to me completely, not just silence. She blocked my number. She stopped responding to emails. When relatives asked her about me, she changed the subject. When my name came up, she left the room. I did not chase her. I told myself space was better than forced conversations. The lawyer explained the new structure. Each of us would receive half once everything cleared. There would be taxes, fees, time delays. It would not be quick or clean. He said these things rarely were. I asked him one thing. I asked whether my parents had ever expressed concern about me directly. He checked the file. He said no. He said there was no written record of that. That helped more than I expected. As the weeks passed, I moved again. I found a small place closer to work. I paid for it myself. I did not touch the advance I had been given. I wanted no confusion about my intentions. People started treating me differently. Some relatives were warmer, others were cautious. A few avoided me. I noticed who asked questions and who assumed answers. One aunt told me I should have let things go. She said money ruins families. I did not argue. I just said I had not asked for this. Another relative told me quietly that something had always felt off. They said my sister had been controlling for years. They said they were glad someone questioned it. I did not respond to that either. The estate eventually released partial distributions, not the full amount, just enough to cover obligations and stabilize accounts. Both of us received the same notice. I heard later that my sister was furious. She had already planned things, investments, purchases, commitments. Now she had to unwind them. I felt no satisfaction hearing that. The house was listed months later. We agreed to sell. We did not speak directly. Everything went through intermediaries. The sale closed without drama. I walked through the house one last time before it sold. The rooms felt smaller than I remembered, less important. I took nothing sentimental, just a few photos I had already scanned. When the final distributions came through, the numbers were large, larger than anything I had ever managed before. I felt the weight of it immediately, not excitement, responsibility. I hired an advisor. I asked questions. I moved slowly. I did not announce anything. My sister eventually reached out. It was a short message. She said she hoped I was happy. She said things had been handled poorly. She did not apologize. I replied with one sentence. I said I hoped we could talk someday. She did not respond. Time passed. Life filled in around the silence, work, routine, ordinary days. The money became part of the background, useful, present, not defining. I still think about that question the lawyer asked me, the one that changed everything. It was simple, it was procedural, it was quiet, it did not accuse anyone, it just asked for clarity. That question did not fix my family, it did not restore trust, it did not bring anyone closer, it only did one thing, it stopped something that was not right from becoming permanent. I live with that. I do not know what my parents intended anymore. I only know what the records show and what did not add up. I have learned to accept uncertainty. I have also learned to set boundaries. Some things cannot be repaired. Some things only need to be understood. And sometimes all that changes a life is one calm question asked at the right moment.